The following episode contains or may contain spoilers. So if you're spoiler sensitive, maybe beware.
Yeah, you sensitive people.
Get out.
No, get in.
If I say yes up top, just don't ask me any follow-ups. Then I get insecure and hesitant. So you better just go.
Welcome to the Phantom Zone. 3 fans, 1 podcast, and a sea of comics.
Woohoo.
Nobody tried to mock me during that one.
Nope.
Great.
I thought about it.
We've made improvements.
I don't get punched anymore.
Well, I'm Noah.
Kayla?
Jared.
God, guys.
I know, I said that as a question, but only because Noah surprises us anytime he wants to ask for our names.
We said our names. We did our job.
That's all we're
She
here for.
questioned it.
Oh, you're not sure.
Yes, so today it is Valentine's Day month. And so we're talking about love.
Aw, I
Yeah.
love this topic.
Blamel.
This is all I think about.
Love.
Of course. Of all types.
Yeah, so, yeah, so I thought it'd be interesting to really get into how love functions in comics. Good things, bad things, threesomes,
What?
Gross.
love triangles, guys. Come
Oh,
on.
okay. I was like, I'm opting out of this conversation now. Bye.
Yeah.
But I did want to start off. So I was looking at our reviews, and we got a review that I think goes perfect with this.
Aw.
Did you know that we're helping people with the babes, guys?
What?
I'm positive we are not.
So I'll just read this review. So, I thought I was a comic book expert, but these guys take the cake. After listening to a few episodes, it's obvious I have a lot to learn. I'll be keeping these guys in my rotation from now on.
Woo.
And will wow all the babes I talk to with my newfound comic book knowledge.
Oh.
Great show.
There's a few possibilities there.
And I love the title of the review. It's The Show Will Help Me with the Babes.
I mean, that's a glowing recommendation.
For sure.
We're helping
Now-
with comics, and we're helping make love, guys.
That's fantastic. I think this person's a robot.
What?
Like a kind of algorithm. They just like threw a bunch of like comic stuff and good review and babes
Oh.
together.
It's like what sells? Comics, sex, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a great review. Thank you, whoever wrote that.
Let us know how you're doing with the babes after this episode.
Actually, I would like a report on that as well. It seems an interesting follow-up.
That is true.
Oh
We
my
will
gosh.
not help you in your love life. We'll tell you bad examples of love life in comics.
Not too many details, please.
Also, I really want them to not have been meta or ironic about that. I really want them to think that, like that they were saying
I mean,
about the babes.
Who will know? I mean, we will
know.
not know.
I know, but it's better if it's not a joke. I think that's for me.
Good luck with the babes, and tell them about our podcast while you're at it.
We should do an offshoot podcast. It's like three. What's it? I can't even think of our 3 hosts, 1 podcast. Is that it? 3 fans, 1 podcast.
You don't even know our
And
tagline.
see, no, I can't because I can't think of things when people are looking at me. That's like my problem. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Way to pick up the baton, guys. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so love in comics is always around. Is it good, guys? Is it bad?
Sometimes. Sometimes.
Yeah, all that's true, right? It's all true. I mean, like, but the thing that sort of bothers me about talking about the subject is that people have this thing where if you don't like romantic subplots, then there's this feeling it's unnecessary. It shouldn't be there. But I think this is very similar to the supporting character sort of thing. And there's this misconception I think people have where it's like, oh, we have a character and they then get into relationships. And I think that's fundamentally wrong. I think that we get a character through relationships.
Yeah, of
In
course.
other words, we learn who these characters are through
The relationships with the people around them.
absolutely, and in a lot of ways they're like the sum total of that. And that's sometimes it's more clear, sometimes less so. But I think a good example, and we can get into this character, I think, because she's one of our bigger foci, is Lois Lane.
I love her.
I feel like a big part of who Superman is his relationship with Lois Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say what we're talking about isn't some ancillary sort of thing, but something that's fundamental to the characters that we really love in superhero comics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that's a good example too to start off with, because I think they have all the makings of a good love story and also a tragic love story. They've kind of gone through the entire ringer. Mm-hmm. And I think with them, and the reason why it works so well is how it started. Mm. So, I mean, if you think about it this way, I kind of mentioned up top, like, you know, kind of love triangles-ish, and we'll get more into love triangles later, but I think there's this weird love triangle with them that Clark loves Lois, Lois loves Superman. So there's this whole like
and
kind
then
of
Clark and Superman get it on too, and
Oh,
that is
gosh.
what. Okay, sorry.
no, but I mean, I think it's always been interesting because she doesn't see him; she only sees Superman, but he sees her. So I always thought that was a really interesting dynamic. And one of the things that I like that they do is whenever there's a reboot or a rebirth or whatever, depending on, I think New 52 did this.
Rebirthing.
Yeah, they weren't together, so they were friends to begin with. So people got to experience their beginnings again.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite part of the relationship between Clark/Superman and Lois, I always have to put it in context of his other option typically is Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people that are my friends prefer him with Wonder Woman, but I feel like Lois Lane nurtures.
You have a lot of friends who are wrong. That's interesting.
Exactly.
Well, that's so weird.
Why are they still even my friends?
I don't
Actually,
know.
one of them is my sister, so can't get rid of her. But I feel like Lois Lane nurtures the best parts of Superman and Clark Kent. The more human aspects, what makes him that Boy Scout, what makes him such a like kind person. I feel like Lois brings that out, whereas Wonder Woman, it can kind of get a little injustice-y real fast.
Oh yeah.
That's a great point. That injustice wasn't just sort of random in their relationship. It's she's an enabler of his warlord like potential or something like that.
Which I always think it's funny too, because whenever they put them together, it's like, oh, will they, won't they? Kind of Superman and Wonder Woman. It's for some reason it turns bad, like because there's been storylines and stuff where like she enables him to be kind of like in the injustice storyline.
Yeah,
I mean and it's so weird because that's not who Wonder Woman is. So it's. What is it about that relationship that makes them weird?
Well, let's be frank here, too. I mean, the only thing that really drives even an interest in those two characters is completely superficial. It's just like, he's the big, strong guy.
Yeah.
She's the big, strong lady.
Exactly.
They should probably scrum or whatever. I don't know.
The accent really helped make the point.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like there's nothing about their characters that you would think were compatible. If they were two characters that had no powers and were just two, like, I don't know, soldiers or police officers, like, I don't
Who
see
gives a
them,
fuck?
I don't see them being like, especially her. I don't see her being attracted to him.
Yeah.
I mean, I visually, especially with the Superman Wonder Woman line that came out, it looks cool because it's like, oh, they're my two favorites and stuff. But then you think about the relationship and it's like, there's something missing. Like,
Here's what I think is that it's missing Clark.
Yeah.
And I think what you touched on is quite brilliant, because the issue is that Lois loves Superman because of everything he is and everything does and all that kind of stuff. And Lois loves Clark too. Mm-hmm. And even if before she knows. Mm-hmm. So she really cares about both of these parts of his personality. And that's huge for Superman because there's almost no one else, maybe Batman in a bromance kind of way, but almost no one else that really appreciates him at both levels or something.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it that way.
Well, I wouldn't have if you hadn't said it.
Yeah, because
Lois is superior.
Yeah, Clark is Superman. I mean, he's both of them. Mm-hmm. You know, he has to separate them. But I mean, that is a good way to put it.
Let's also say about Lois. I love that she has moved from the damsel. And maybe she's always been one of the stronger damsels, even in the beginning. So I don't want to undersell that.
Telling him shit.
Yeah.
She's gonna get.
But she was the strong woman of the 40s, kind of like the reporter with Moxie or whatever. You know? But she has been so sort of strong in her own way. She can't rip tanks in half, obviously. But I mean, like, not taking no for an answer. They kind of gave her the best role that she could have, which is a journalist doesn't take shit.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And she really paved the way for a lot of female characters or love interests to do that in comics, because I mean, from what I understand, she's really the first one that was really with Moxie, and like she took no for an answer, and she wasn't just some girl that the superhero had to fall in love with.
I think studying Lois Lane over time is also kind of studying how romance has evolved in comics. Well, especially just kind of it goes into the treatment of women. But if we're looking at it through the lens of romance, that means there's less damsels in distress storylines and more interpersonal, more complex problems between the couples.
Kelly, you said you would never mention women on this podcast. That was a promise. You signed a contract.
Well, like and I love what they're doing now with the current Superman and Rebirth, because it's, you know, Lois and Clark, and they have a son, John, and just having that whole new dynamic with an actual family. I mean, I love Lois and their relationship even more. Hands down, they're probably my favorite relationship in any comic ever.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like there's such rare cases of a person that's like a character that's with another character for most of their creation or life. And Lois Lane is that to Clark Kent. I know he's been with different people, whether they're married or dating or just friends, depends on the continuity or the issue that you're reading. But I don't know. I really like the stability aspect of that relationship.
Yeah, because I really don't think there's many. Because I mean, there's Aquaman and Mira.
I was gonna say I love them. They're ideal married couple.
Well, yeah, and I think what makes it specific in that way is that like there's plenty of couples that are also, they're both superheroes, both respected. Lois is one of the few ones who's underpowered, not a superhero in any respect, but that she really, at a character level at least, stands toe to toe with Superman. The whole time, and as long as I've read her and as much as I understand her history, you get the sense she doesn't really need Superman. Not that she doesn't, they don't love each other, but like she is a badass. She would have, there was, you probably know this, a Lois Lane comic book. Now, for the genre of, it probably didn't just do so well under superhero stuff, but the idea of like a badass reporter that goes out, and she would have an insanely interesting life unto herself if no one had any heat vision.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I always like they're kind of just going more into their relationship. I always like their relationship because currently in Heroes in Crisis, she gets the information for this secret sanctuary that these superheroes go to, and she flat out tells them like, hey, I gotta report this. Like, I this is who I am. And he respects her enough to be like, yeah, I understand. Go do it. I mean, just the level of respect that they show each other is just unparalleled, and with most couples in comics.
She has the power too to swan in and out of being part of Superman's main plot and being a subplot at times when the story calls from it. And I feel like that's super important. That means that she's such a strong character that she could be part of the main plot, as well as being on the back burner almost in a subplot.
That's very true.
And that hits on a thing in comic writing that I love and I think is really smart, which is when any kind of character development, in this case the sort of romantic character development, also is involved and connected to the driving of the plot.
Yeah. Well, because in my other favorite, Batman, love of my life, my favorite match with him is Catwoman, but I don't ever want that to be the plot of his books. Like, if that was the main focus, just like I didn't like that they were getting married, I don't like that that's the main focus. Catwoman should always be a subplot in the Batman comics, but with Lois, I don't mind. Yeah. And that's kind of a difference.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how I feel about it. I've always liked their will they, won't they kind of popping in and out kind of relationship.
I think as long as it stays that way, because I agree.
Yeah.
But that kind of brings up a whole different topic that I would love to touch on. And it's kind of like when a character, especially the hero, has multiple options, how people choose which one to ship, I'm not a multi-shipper. I have
which one to ship? I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Oh, ship is like when you really like two characters together. And like that's their soulmate, basically. So like I like Clark and Lois. I don't like Clark and Wonder Woman.
Oh, it's like short for relationship?
Yes, exactly.
That's
Have
fantastic.
you never heard
I've
that
never
before?
heard that before. I love that.
But no, Batman is paired with so many people.
Yeah. Talia.
Yeah.
That's true.
But I kind of have blinders on. I'm like, no, that's your soulmate. You can't be with anyone else ever. And that's
I mean, that is true. And I think it is interesting how that. I mean, I feel like sometimes comic book writers or comics or characters in general, they put them with people to see how it's received. And then if it doesn't work too well, they're like, okay.
And well, also because, I mean, I think writing is that way where you have to play out that, like, the writers don't necessarily know how it's going to go when they start down the track. I think sometimes, like, in this case, Batman and Catwoman, Tom King probably has a sense of where he's ultimately going to go, and like where he's starting, obviously, but he may not know what's going to go along the way, and some really cool things might come up, and it's like, oh no, this is a really interesting part of the relationship. Let's kind of keep going with this or something like that.
Another person that this happens to a lot is Peter Parker with Gwen and MJ. The fan base is very divisive.
And I have to ask you guys, where are we in the Gwen, Mary Jane sort of thing?
I like Gwen.
I like Gwen as well.
So you guys like a character whose sole contribution is dying. Great. Okay, let's move on, guys.
So are you an MJ fan?
Totally MJ.
Haven't they both died?
I don't think Mary Jane's died, actually.
You know what? I really like...
if she has died, it's been in the most, like, she was killed by the Prowler, but she was brought back with Prowler serum, or whatever. Like, very short.
I mean, he has so many girl problems. He has...
Yeah.
But
he's a busy man.
He has the typical, like, superhero relationship problems, because most of the time these people don't... We touched on this, too. Just, if you love them and you're in a relationship with them, tell them that you're the fucking superhero.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly having to skip out and be like, oh, I'm sorry we had that date, but I gotta go, fight Doc Ock.
That's hella suspicious.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't want to be the hero to be a good liar anyway. Like, what were you doing? I was hang gliding. I should have said something.
And it kind of it reminds me of All-Star Superman, when Lois got mad at Superman for lying to her this entire time. It's like, so you've been lying to me that you've been Superman this entire time. Even though it'd be like...
it's breaking the trust.
Exactly.
And it was a clever way Grant Morrison expresses that, too, because he first has her have this almost patently absurd denial about it. And I think what's in the back there is like, because if it's true, that means
pissed.
you've been lying to me this entire time.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to pretend like this is impossible that what you're saying is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a very human
smart.
reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like that, and I like how they showed that, and they kind of explore it. But I am a little tired of this whole like skipping out, like not telling them type thing. Only because, like with Mary Jane, we know that they've always been together. They're going to be together and stuff. So it's like, okay, stop with this game. You know what I mean?
But so I'm with you because I think Spider-Man's been rebooted so many times.
Yeah.
It depends on what. Like, so most of my reading of the character, especially when I was younger, it was just in that period where she knew he was Spider-Man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I agree. I like that better. Though there have been criticisms of a little bit of the misogyny there, because her main contribution, I'm quoting someone, is being in the bedroom wearing tight shirts, waiting for him to come back.
Yeah.
So there's a problem too, which is like when you have them in a kind of more stable relationship, like a lot of times, especially if it's a male protagonist, the love interest, the wife, the girlfriend ends up kind of just being the person that stays at home and represents the hearth or something.
Well, and that's exactly why I prefer Gwen. And it's because, and I really do like MJ as a character. I think she's awesome, but I feel like she's a weaker version of Lois Lane, where she can't really stand on her own. She does a lot of the time.
Not that way for sure.
Yeah, she a lot of the time gets written into okay, well, I guess I'll be waiting for you here.
Yeah, and
bye.
I think they did try to change that a bit, at least people's perception of her with the new Spider-Man game.
Yeah.
Because she was a Lois Lane. Like, hands down, she was an investigative reporter and stuff like that, and she's getting in trouble because she's investigating this stuff. I liked it, but I mean,
Well, see, that doesn't seem like MJ.
That's what I'm saying. So
that's a different character.
It was a little disconnected because that's not MJ.
And I feel like you can write MJ in a way that makes her powerful, but not in the same way as conforming to a Lois Lane stereotype.
Her power came from, and I don't know how we respect this now, but like, she was a model actress.
Yeah.
And it was this one moment in Peter Parker's life where he was kind of like weirdly knocking it out of the park, where it's like he would be getting his ass kicked, in almost every layer, but he would go back home and he's like, at least I have a beautiful, wonderful, successful woman that loves me, kind of stuff.
Well, and see, like, I feel like there's so much interesting things you can do with the struggling model actress as a person who's trying to break into a really elusive, creative, difficult field. There's a lot of drama there that they could touch on.
Oh, for sure. And they have, but you're right, it gets overshadowed by a lot of just like, I'm in the tight t-shirt. I hope Spider-Man comes home. Whatever. That's how she sounds.
You made me think of that part in Parks and Rec when she was like, when sunlight touches my head, I just fall to pieces. I don't know why you did that voice, but
I wanted to touch on damselism. generally.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm of two minds about it. So one is that it is an example of especially how things used to be in terms of misogyny. That a woman was only used as a sort of, plot moving, like, she's in trouble, save me, she's tied to the train tracks or whatever.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's maybe a thing that grows out naturally if you're just trying to create stakes for your hero. So if your hero, and the misogyny really is most of the heroes were men.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to raise the stakes, and you're trying to really personally invest that hero in the thing that's going to happen. Putting their love interest in danger, is a good way to do that.
Yeah, it's compelling.
So I think maybe there's a way to preserve it a little bit without making it that, the character's soul sort of thing. So,
Yeah, no, of course. I think that's a really good point. I don't have, in general, a problem with I have to rescue my love from my arch enemy. But I feel like if that's one, their only role and it happens over and over and over, one, it's lazy writing, and two, it is a little misogynistic.
Yeah.
But I mean, people don't say the same thing when Batman has to rescue Robin for the 70th time.
That's true. Yeah.
So again,
Because
I feel
Robin's out there kicking ass.
well, exactly. Like they're constantly in danger. So I feel like there is a place for that. That probably will happen if you're having a whole ensemble of villains. They're going to try to get at you.
That's a good point, because it's like it makes sense from the angle that is what a villain would do.
Exactly.
Somebody trying to hurt you is going to hurt the people you love.
Yeah, exactly. So as long as it's not their singular role, as long as they're a strong character, they can be in danger sometimes. That's not inherently bad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, because I think I agree with don't make them that's the only thing that they're there for.
Yeah.
Like, you don't see MJ for 50 issues and then she pops up getting kidnapped for this. It's like, what was she doing this entire time? Like, I don't think we're advocating for them to be superheroes or to be something that they're not.
No, in a lot of ways, I don't want that.
Exactly.
And I just think more do something with them. Don't make them always be the damsel in distress. Over and over.
That's why, again, Lois is such a badass. So I know we're not getting back to that. I just mean it's another place to point to, like, she's doing a lot of other shit.
And to bring it, just to touch on her again, because I can't really think of any. I'm sure there are. I just in my mind, I can't think of any other examples. When Doomsday was going after Jonathan, Lois had Jonathan, and she was running away from Doomsday with Jonathan. Like, they show how much she can do.
Yeah.
Even though she's not a superhero. So
maybe another good example, and it doesn't really help with the misogyny example because it's the genders are reversed, but I think as much as people haven't liked Trevor, what's his last name again? I don't know.
Steve Trevor.
Steve Trevor.
Trevor is his last name.
Trevor Stevenson, I believe. But as Steve, I was in the military, so I'm obviously going to call him Trevor. Anyway, so at least they found a cool thing for him to do that would be involved in a kind of adventure-based plot.
I like Steve Trevor for the same reason I like Lois Lane for Wonder Woman. It's that he brings out the more human aspects. It kind of brings them down a little bit, and I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I do think it's funny that one of the biggest female superheroes, her damsel in distress is this badass secret operative. Yeah. So it is funny to see how
there's
the male
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. The male superheroes all have these unpowerful, reporters most of the time. And then, no, I don't like Steve Trevor. I'm just going to put that.
I totally get that. And I brought it up not because I think that I'm so into their relationship, but just that it's cool that he has something to do. Maybe that's the answer in part, which is like, if you're going to have a woman and she's going to be a supporting character, like, if you want to involve her in the plot, which is going to be, you're going to have to give her something intrepid to do. It can't just be. And then the last thing I'll say on that, at the same time, some people who are in professions like, let's say, they're soldiers or cops or firemen, sometimes their wife is a teacher. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to overgender things. I just mean it can't, as long as it's not overused, the idea that the love interest isn't doesn't live the most exciting life isn't wrong. I think as long as they're well written and it's not, again, every character.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Diversity is the key, guys.
and Wonder Woman has saved Steve Trevor quite a bit. So, I mean,
I think Chris Pine helped me soften on Steve a little.
Yeah.
With his great acting and
beautiful
awesome
face.
There it is.
Let me throw this question at you guys. So I know we're not really going to talk about power couples. That's a later episode because there's so much to talk about there. But what power couples, and if you don't know what I mean like two characters like Aquaman and Mira, who are both powerful and
super powered people in a relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Reed Richards, Susan
Sue.
Storm,
Apollo and Midnighter.
Yeah. Indeed, absolutely. But okay, but they're a subsection of what you might think of as like the stable relationship in comics, the long-standing stable relationship. How do you feel about those in comics? And the reason I ask is they're often kind of boring in terms of the story.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Because, well, I think with like the Sue and Reed thing, they had to further their relationship by giving them kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's what always happens with these power couples. They have to have kids. I mean, what else is more exciting about the relationship? I mean, it's always good to see them have that partner with them all the time, but it does get a little stale. And then you have to make them a damsel or somebody's in, trouble. But then what else are you going to do? Oh, give them kids. Yeah. So it's just this whole cycle over and over. Midnighter and Apollo adopted a kid. Yeah. I mean, so I think they do it with every couple.
It's an important thing to point out because it's not a matter of saying that in the reality of their life, it wouldn't be a good thing. But it's in order for it to appear in the story, there has to be something interesting going on with it.
Yeah.
It's like the characters that like are in a basically stable, consistent space. There's no reason for the writer to like check in and it's like, oh, and look, Green Arrow and Black Canary, still good. Okay, moving on. Like, it just doesn't.
Well, that brings up a good point about these stable couples because I was looking at Black Canary and Green Arrow just to kind of see how the relationship has been over the years.
When it's good, I like them.
Yeah. So I have a few examples of things that I feel like they just want to throw a wrench in the cogs just to make it exciting.
That bothers me in every medium.
Yeah. So Green Arrow cheated on Black Canary. It was like Arrow number 28 with Black Lightning's niece.
I mean, he is a rogue.
Ugh.
So, I mean, stuff like that, I guess it adds drama. It's fine, maybe. But I mean, for them to do that with another superhero's family member just seems a little weird to me. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
I feel like there's this misconception that healthy relationships are boring.
Yeah.
That's gross. That's not what the ideal should be. We shouldn't be looking for drama.
Yeah.
Especially because it feels like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's that the relationship itself is boring. I think just in terms of moving the story along, like to Noah's point, like having kids certainly isn't a reflection of that the relationship is boring. Yeah. But I think in terms of like, if you're going to have the story, I think stories require change. Yeah, progress, exactly. Then stasis is almost never like good for the movement of a story. Mm-hmm. Like there has to be a crisis that then resolves and something.
Well, I feel like the relationship doesn't have to be the thing that changes. I feel like the outer things that you can handle together as a couple can be the drama that takes place in the comics. We're in comic book world, like lots of different things can happen.
For sure. Yeah.
Aside from, oh no, they're fighting again because you were late for dinner, or oh man, you cheated on me.
But the thing is that oftentimes the relationship itself, while it's true and in the background, isn't really touched on. So you could read comics, you could read Fantastic Four, and you could forget Susan Storm and Reed Richards are married and have kids. Now, the reason I say that is that in certain adventures, they're just a guy and a girl doing things, and it's true. There would be conflict.
Like you're saying, they don't explicitly be like, "Oh, my husband,"
or more of the relationship itself isn't connected to the plot. But it's just in the background.
But I think with kind of what she's saying or how she feels, I mean, I agree. That they're in a relationship. They're married. So it's just that feeling that like that's kind of cool. Like they're married and they've always been together.
Yeah, and so I don't want that to go away either. Like I don't want the setting of that to go away.
And that's I mean, I guess it really depends on what couple it is, or if they've really been a strong couple, or for them to kind of do stuff like that. I don't.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, and I'm not totally against. Well, going back to like the power couples. In the Bat family, there's two that I really like, and it's Dick and Barbara, and then Tim
you're gonna
and
say
Stephanie.
Tim and Jason.
Tim and
It's
Jason.
there. It's in the background. You guys are missing it.
No.
If I was a multi-shipper.
It would be Jason and Damien, to be fair.
No, Jason is a kid.
Yeah, it's clearly
Well, no, I mean, if he was older. God, guys. Jeez.
Yeah.
I'm saying personality-wise.
It's like, hear me out.
But see, I don't know if it's just like the Bat family in general and the dynamics and what Bruce superimposes on the family is different, but I don't feel like that's boring. And I don't feel like Dick should date outside of, I don't know.
The Barbara?
Yeah. I mean, because his
I'm
relationship
kind of with Starfire.
I was going to say, I know you like Starfire. But even then, she's a superhero.
That's true.
I don't think it works dating a civilian in Batman universe.
Yeah. I did like the progression between Dick and Barbara's relationship because they still dated when she was Oracle.
Yeah.
So that just showed how devoted he was to her.
That he wasn't an asshole.
See, this is a problem we haven't really talked about it that much, which is that these are, I think, even if you have a preference, these are two relationships that really did make sense and both work.
Yeah.
And so the fan community is divided, but not on the basis of like, so unlike the Lois Wonder Woman thing, where I think the Wonder Woman thing just really doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
In this case, in the Teen Titans, that the Starfire Dick Grayson thing was very real and very meaningful. And in the Bat comics, Batgirl Nightwing.
That's a very good example of, because again, I'm like, that's your soulmate. How dare you even look at another person?
Yeah.
With the Teen Titans show I watched growing up that got me into comics, Robin and Starfire's relationship was one of the main things that I loved about that show.
Absolutely.
I thought it was so cute. But in the comics, like you'd said, I feel like Barbara makes more sense. So it also can kind of just depend on the medium and how that relationship is written.
Mm-hmm.
I have an opposite.
Oh,
There's a character very true to my heart. Sorry, very true to my hammer.
Oh, I see.
who I don't think there has been a good relationship. So I'm talking about Thor, obviously. And I don't think it's just Thor, but I think I can present a decent case for this.
Yeah.
Is that he's had three main relationships. He's had Jane Foster, he's had Sif, and he's had Amora the Enchantress.
I always forget about
God.
Amora.
Yeah, and I mentioned this because it wasn't just a one-off. It was like 15 to 20 years where that was.
What?
If he dated
Yeah.
anybody, he was primarily going to date her.
Yep.
So here's the story. Morning Glory. Jane Foster, awesome. I mean, what's great about Thor comics in this respect? He's really good at starting to date people. He's really great at a beginning. And this happened. You mentioned it in the movie that with Thor and Jane Foster. The first two movies, they're involved, and then when you actually have to write them as a couple, it just doesn't work.
Oh, man.
And I think the reason being is that with coming together, opposites are interesting.
Yeah.
They're from different places, they have different mentalities. When in terms of long-standing relationships, you need commonality, you need common ground. Another reason why Lois Lane and Clark are perfect, because they have a difference, obviously, from Kryptonian and human, everything like that, and then coming together in small town and big city. But then they're also, at some level, also reporters, who get each other at that level or whatever. But anyway, so Thor, the Jane Foster thing doesn't work. You have the Sif thing because now that's playing the
More
Superman Wonder Woman thing, and they end up, and it always happens. I don't think anybody intends it. She's his little sister. That's how that relationship goes. She just ends up being.
Oh, I thought you meant literally. I was like, oh, this.
No. No, she's just his cousin. It's fine.
This is like Quicksilver and Scarlet.
No,
Witch.
I know. Yeah, ugh.
They did.
Yeah, no, you're right. Deep, gross cut.
It's disgusting.
But yeah, so that relationship doesn't work, and then the Amora Enchantress thing,
Yikes,
doesn't work because
she's awful.
She is
like evil.
Cool,
deeply
but bad,
deeply evil.
Yeah.
And they have to which is another problem. They have to forget what she's like to make the thing work.
Yeah.
Which is another problem we haven't talked about, which is when in order to make the plot have this romantic thing, they will sometimes outright just change the characters.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Gamora, the most deadly woman, but around Chris Pratt's chubby face, she becomes as docile as a kitten.
I mean,
no, he's great, but
who wouldn't be as docile as a kitten around
Chris Pratt?
Andy Dwyer's face?
No, I get it, but I mean, I definitely feel like they took. She's not Gamora. I think when in that context.
One of my all-time favorite scenes of any love type thing is with Jane and Thor.
Yeah,
and that's when he took her to the moon when she was dying.
Oh yeah, this is the comic. Run. Yeah,
in the comic. I thought I like the relationship there because they're not together.
Yeah, they're not dating.
They're not
in
dating,
that part,
but you can tell how much they love each other. And I think that is perfect for their relationship.
And if you like that relationship, by the way, the Jane Foster Thor thing, I might also add some of what has interfered with it for good reason is the setting. Unfortunately, I mean, it's these star-crossed lovers.
Well, he can't be on Midgard all the time.
Exactly, and certain characters can. So Superman is from Krypton, but for the most part, he's an Earth. He's a Terran.
Yeah.
He can't go back because it's...
No, absolutely. That's a good point. He can't shrink himself down and go down to the bottle
it's no
city.
longer there.
He can't shrink himself down and go to the bottle city. Okay, am I more accurate? Okay, but yeah. So with Thor, like like a lot of what you want in a Thor as a Thor reader is Thor to be in doing Asgardian stuff or in space. So in that case, you're just gonna like
leave her there.
Yeah, are they just gonna have the all-time longest distance relationship? You can, but then you have to ask, like, is that really?
I mean,
a relationship?
if he was to have a long distance relationship,
Yeah,
it would be her.
Yeah,
because I know, well, it might work, but she did end up marrying somebody else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I think she always will love him, and that's what I love about that relationship because with that in mind, because he's always gone, you don't have those damsel in distress things. So
yeah, that's true.
She's always going to be there. So
Yeah.
it just kind of cuts all that shit out.
Yeah. But there's also a thing in comics where if the relationship doesn't, if they're just not, you're not seeing it for months on time because like
What's
the
the
last
point?
2 years, Thor's been in, like, I don't know, the Black Galaxy or something like that. Like then him go like, hey, I've been gone for, millennia, but it's, what are you cooking? Like it's not. No, so I guess I mentioned all that just to say I don't know that it's the case that all characters are meant to be in or a relationship in the terms of like making their story better and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it goes to show what people want in comics with how much love is being in comics. So it's not just the superheroes fighting the villains.
Yeah,
they're adding this whole other love aspect to it, and it kind of goes off and on, but I feel like it's becoming more prominent in the comics, personally.
I worry about that, but go ahead.
I feel like as long as it makes sense for the character and what that character wants out of their life, then I don't mind if love takes kind of center stage or if it's more of a periphery thing. To compare Superman and Batman again, I feel like Clark Kent would probably really want a love in his life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Lois's place in his life makes sense. With Bruce, he's not out there pining for love. So if the focus of his comics even touched on that, it wouldn't make sense for the character. So I feel like if the character wants that, then it has a place. If the character really doesn't concern themselves with love, then they don't need a romantic subplot. They don't need a romantic plot at all.
Yeah, I think the only reason why they might be doing it more, from what I've seen, is to show more of the character, to let their guard down, and to kind of go into that aspect of it. I feel like they're really, personally for me, I feel like they're really getting into the psyche and the heart of the characters more recently, especially with the Heroes in Crisis run. Mm-hmm. That has nothing to do with love, but it's showing more of these aren't just people that fight. They also have a life.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're really exploring that. I think they should do it more, but don't be dumb about it.
So I completely agree that at some level, this sort of romantic relationships and things like that are a part of, in terms of the story, like character development. But I think the problem is that the genre itself is biased against this in certain ways. So it's an adventure comic, and I'm not saying that means there can't be these other things. But what I mean is that the plot is generally around fighting, conflict, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And to forward the plot, a lot of times you have to like pause and develop characters. Mm-hmm. And it feels like a lot of times when you're developing characters in the romantic direction, you're taking time away from moving the plot and things like that. Now, when it's done well, it's done really well. But what I'm saying is I think things will often fall apart in when they, sort of like, it feels like, there's so much good character development here. Brian Michael Bendis, by the way, is great when he's doing character development, but he's been often criticized, and for good reason, that when he does events, when he does big stories, when the story is the point, the stuff is deeply deflated and stuff like that. So I only mean to say sometimes these things are in conflict.
I completely agree about the Bendis thing. When reading his runs on comics, and especially the Miles Morales run, I mean, you really get to fall in love with that character and all the supporting characters, and then you read the events, and I mean, it just seems like all of that was for nothing. Yeah. Only because you don't get any of that. You don't really get the interaction between them that you would have gotten in that, and maybe because there's a lot of characters in it.
Yeah.
But that would make it seem like there would be better interactions.
Well, in terms of a point that Jared brought up a little bit ago, in terms of how relationships should kind of reflect like personal growth for the character, I feel like, and I'm bringing up something that's pretty controversial, is that Harley Quinn is made through her relationship with the Joker.
Yeah.
But in current comics especially, thank God, she's no longer like his puppet, his toy. They're not really connected that much anymore. And so her relationship kind of shifts. And a popular one that people love or hate is her relationship with Poison Ivy. And I kind of have a fun little anecdote about it. Because when I was at San Diego Comic-Con last summer, I went into a panel and it was literally like ships in fandoms. So it wasn't narrowed down to comics, but they just polled like 1,000 people on the streets. And they would talk about their favorite couples. And overall, actually, Clark Kent and Lois Lane was number one for people that were surveyed for their favorite couple.
Really hard to beat.
The highest ranking gay couple was Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy.
Well, I'm going to say this, and it's probably controversial, but I don't think people like that should be in relationships. Now, hear me out.
Wait,
Because
don't
I'm
like
coming.
what?
I'm gonna explain. Because I'm coming from a moral place, and a lot of people don't. I don't think clowns should fuck plants. I don't.
Oh my!
I'm gonna say it now. Put that. Okay, sorry.
They're so sweet with each other, though, and I feel like they're both on the same side. So it's not this like weird hero that's kind of toying around with the villain. They're both on the bad side, quote unquote. But I feel like again they're softer with each other, and Poison Ivy doesn't destroy Harley the way that the Joker does.
I completely agree. It's a better relationship.
Yeah.
There was this thread that I saw on Twitter with that, and how this person was essentially saying that they're not in a relationship. He refuses to acknowledge that they're in a relationship, even though I'm pretty sure they proposed to each other. And if you read the Harley Quinn comics, you could clearly see they've been in a relationship. And you want to know his reason on why he said they're not in a relationship?
Yikes. No, but tell me.
It's because they never slept together.
What?
And that made me so mad that, I mean, I just don't understand how some people, they see this and they're like, oh, well, I've never seen them sleep together.
Okay.
I also don't like that they're two girls, so therefore they're not in a relationship.
Do you know he came from a homophobic direction, or was he pro-queer stuff?
I wouldn't know if he's pro-queer.
Well, I'm
Did you get a sense
just
for
going to fashion a guess here and say that it's probably a little bit of homophobia.
Yeah.
I would imagine. See, the reason I asked, though, is that there was a lot of queer critics have mentioned that the problem with a lot of gay relationships in media is because the general public or people who produce stuff can be homophobic, they'll allow gay characters to date, in quotations, but they so denude it of sexuality that it's like, this isn't a real relationship. So if he was coming from there, I'm like, oh, that's good.
With how he was acting and the other comments I saw, it wasn't that way.
He was a piece of shit.
Yes, he was a piece of shit. But I do agree with that. But also a part of me being in the LGBT community and having to...
Are you coming out on the podcast?
I did like
Oh my God.
5-6 episodes ago.
Fantastic.
Anyway, I'm gay.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so I think still fighting for acceptance and everything to be normal with gay couples. And there's been plenty of TV shows and everything that's really exemplifying that. I mean, in Saga, I was telling Kayla earlier, there's a transgender character that's in love with a robot that is straight.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff, but I feel like they might be hesitant to really go into that direction because they might want people to ease into it, I guess, and to be okay with it before they start showing them scissoring.
The number one...
I get that, yeah.
Well, that it has no place in comics.
Well, no, of course not.
But I feel like
Depends on the comics.
a
Really, yeah.
specific example of this would be Kate Kane and Maggie Sawyer, because the Batwoman comics were amazing. The art, the story, they were fantastic. But all of the creative team basically quit when DC was like, they can't get married. They can be together, and then she proposes. No, we can't show the wedding. So the whole team in protest quit. And I feel like that's a good, we still have a long way to go. It's great that they're trying to be more inclusive. But if you're not going to, I don't know.
I do feel like they're so safe with love in comics too, because of stuff like that. I think you said earlier, like when one of the first episodes, that you want this to reflect their real world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not believable if, I mean, what was it? North
Star.
North Star had their whole marriage displayed all over Marvel.
Yeah.
But then DC, the supposedly more progressive one,
Yeah.
won't show Batwoman's. I mean, to be fair, who is Batwoman? I mean, to their main staple characters, why are you afraid to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unclear. A lot goes into that politics, and I think most of the time when they don't show more realistic reflections of queer life and things like that, a lot of times it's more the business aspect, which is not an excuse by any means.
Yeah.
But they're so worried about alienating crowds and stuff like that they'll make bad products in an attempt. But I wanted to go back to Saga because you mentioned the trans character and the straight robot, and it's Petrichor. Is that her name?
I think they just call it Petri.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I can't completely get on board with that.
Why?
Because I don't think that random people should fuck TVs. I don't. And here's the thing. I'm sorry.
Well, to kind of bring it back, Saga has a very good relationship.
They really do.
I mean,
you're
The
absolutely
main
right about
relationship is so sweet.
that is the foundation of the entire comic. I mean, it's a forbidden love, and it goes from there.
And they've managed, and I know I beat this drum all the time, to make that romantic relationship, those character relations, central to the plot. Because it's a star-crossed lovers, Romeo and Juliet, in space, Star Wars adventure, and it's the coolest thing that's ever happened. Yeah.
This is kind of a random question, but do you guys have favorite couples in comics? If you have to choose one or two?
It really is super hard now. Because I would probably go with, it's really weird because I'm on their own. Their characters I don't love so much, but I think Black Canary and Green Arrow.
Really?
Yeah.
Noah did his best to try to dismantle that, but it didn't get through.
I have another fun fact about that.
It's very
No!
It's very turbulent. I think it's because it doesn't need to happen, but it does, and I love that. So
Yeah.
it seems to have happened organically because they were together in the Justice League, and their personalities, writers just picked up on like, oh, this would really work. And the reason I said it's not, one isn't like derivative of the other. Mm-hmm. It's not the principle of the comic the way Fantastic Four is. It's not Aqua and Mira, who I love, but they're still like, well, a king must have her, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the story in some sense creates a vacuum that they're going to write into. This felt little random and extra, and it just turned into something beautiful. So that's what.
Well, I love their beginning, or how they show it in the animated series.
Yeah.
Because she did not pay him any mind at all. It kind of reminds me of Brienne and Tormund in Game of Thrones. How he's like, hey, and she's like, get the fuck away from me.
Yeah.
I love it. I can't wait for that relationship to blossom.
Yeah.
No.
She's not going to be with Jamie.
Jamie and Brienne is where it's at, Noah.
I mean, I don't know that it makes sense for me that Brienne's not a lesbian, but that's fine. I mean, and not that a more masculine woman has to be queer or anything like that, but I just feel like lesbians need their heroes too, and she is amazing.
That's where they have Arya.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Well, we're getting a little off topic now.
Okay, that's great.
Ooh,
No, I
that's
think
a
Arya's
child.
18 now.
Okay, so you're editing all of this out. I'm really uncomfortable.
I think my favorite, I guess, couple in comics would be Midnighter and Apollo.
Really?
Only because they're
it.
so fucked up. Like, I mean, mentally and everything.
I mean, they are kind of the opposites attract thing too, which is
It's a fan
really
fiction
interesting.
come to life.
Yeah.
really
We've touched
is.
on this before, but it's like, what if Superman, Batman totally got it on? And then they're just like, yeah, what if I make that a real comic?
I mean, essentially, and it works. It
Yeah.
really does. And they've had their runs where they're not together, and they always come back. And it's a love story as old as time.
Yeah, and very believable too. I think that's what's really good about it. Like, I think because the point of them in some sense was that relationship, the writers who were incidentally very talented, so Warren Ellis and Grant Morrison, different people that have been on that title, I think kind of understood, okay, so they've made the nuances of their relationship really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Kayla?
Well, the one I wanted to mention isn't like a really famous one. It's maybe not my favorite, but I'm so sweet on it, and it's Bigby and Snow White from the Fables comics.
Wow.
I think
Not
they're
that that's a
so
deep cut, but
cute.
okay.
I like that. Yeah. They are really cute.
Right? And I mean, it has the opposites attract thing, but also she has a lot of agency. So does he. I don't know. I'm very soft and sweet on that couple.
What kind of relationships do you guys not like in comics? Is there a one where any like a kind of trope or even an example where you're like, no, this is not going to go well, and I don't like it?
I can't think of something specific to comics. I think in general, like if I'm looking across mediums, things that I don't really like are when they do the will they, won't they for such a long time. They get me to really root for it. They're together for like 0.2 seconds and then something breaks them up. And then they have to do it back into the will they, won't they thing. I think that...
Hey, man, I like The Office. No.
Well, The Office is, I think, different because Jim and Pam, after all of the will they, won't they, get married.
Yeah.
And stay together.
But there was a period where they kind of
they were
some
arguing.
Jeopardy or something.
Oh,
like
but
that.
I mean, I love that relationship. And then the last season where it was like, oh, Pam is kind of like might be cheating on Jim with the guy. And I was like, that's fucked up. Like,
yeah, but that's
does not need to be.
Yeah, that's bad writing.
Exactly.
We need a drama here, so I'm going to do something like that. I don't know. That type of writing plot annoys me in terms of romance across mediums.
I think I don't like when they put people together just to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I like they put Quicksilver with so many different people. He's married to how many people? I don't know. I don't like it.
You have this weird fascination with Quicksilver.
Because he's so weird.
Yeah. I think it's because you love Flash so much. He's the bizarro version of it.
I really think he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't like when they put him together just to put him together. I like Patty Spivot a lot for Barry Allen. She worked on the force, the police station. I liked it a lot, but also Iris was still around. And the only reason why he wasn't with her is because it was a reboot. So it's just like, yeah, I guess
it's going to go there eventually.
Exactly. Like, I guess you have to make them date this other person until they come to their senses and finally gets with the person they're always with.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like unnecessary love interests.
Yeah.
Kind of just go away after like 5 issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I just don't like any time it feels like
Love.
Exactly.
What?
It's not about love. I don't like Fiona Apple songs. That's what. No. No. I think I don't like because so this is bad because I like versions of it, but I don't like the. I don't know, she might be crazy and bad for you, but I'm going to go after it anyway. Now, again, I like it when it goes well, but it goes badly more often than not to the degree I have to be like, why would you date this person?
What the hell were you thinking?
Daredevil and Elektra is a kind of really good example of that for me. I
hate them.
So let me pay homage to the fact that I get what they're going for. People are often attracted to people that are not good for them, and that should be reflected in comics.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. But there's a point where the character is like, you realize she stabs people professionally.
I hate it
right?
so much.
Yeah, it is really bad. I think Daredevil has the worst luck.
Yeah.
The worst luck with anybody he's ever been with. They all die.
There's a trope expression. I think it's called, what is it, like being lockered or being something like that. It comes from, help me out here, listeners, but when it's from Kyle Rayner's girlfriend being shoved into fridged. That's it. Have you heard fridged before?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just means that the cat. As a matter of fact, one of you may have told me this on the podcast earlier. So whatever. But it means that they are like killed to make a point. To like
I did that.
Did you?
And I didn't remember the thing.
Yeah, and it was from Major Force. He kills. Okay. Yeah, we can maybe get rid of that expression. Just say she was daredeviled. Because he has
He's Murdoch.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love him. You know I love him. But
your boy cannot date.
Oh, I know. And yeah, it's so bad. I hate Elektra and it doesn't even make sense. Someone sat me down and was explaining all the good points about Elektra. I wouldn't listen. I hate her so much. I'm blinded by my rage.
Well, the thing, I love the character, just not that relationship. To be clear, like a badass ninja assassin woman who's also independently aesthetical. Like, so in other words, she isn't just like, she's a Greek woman and she wears the headband and has long. She has all the kind of cool things about ninjas, but doesn't look like one. I think she's been wonderful as a girlfriend to Matt Murdock. It doesn't make a lot.
She's the least interesting part of his story,
and she can stand on her own too.
That's what I'm saying. If you read some of her comics, she's just a badass. But yeah. You're like, I'm not into it.
I think we should round it out with love triangles.
Love triangles.
I think the one that I always think about is Wolverine, Jean Grey, in Cyclops.
Also, you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't like
Who would you rather her be with?
Scott.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't mean to say it that way, but yeah. Yeah, Scott.
I like Emma Frost with Scott.
Yeah, me too. So if I could pick, yeah,
Kayla's face is horrified.
yeah.
Oh.
So that would be like a quadrangle.
Yeah, quadrangle.
Quadrangle.
I think because out of all of those characters, Scott's probably my favorite. And I'm like, well, if I had to pick, it'd be Jean Grey because I don't think Emma Frost brings out the best in him.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. There's not really a good match for Scott.
I am not a Scott fan, so I like him being in a terrible relationship with Emma.
That's mean.
Well, it also is like this demarcation of like Scott as like an independent adult who's gotten kind of dark.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like if he can date Emma Frost, who is not,
But that's not his best self, is all I'm saying.
it's just what he is now. I mean, I agree.
That's true. Yeah, it's definitely not like who he is as a Foundation character.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, and then all the Avengers fans out there will know of the infamous Vision Wonder Woman. She came in, and screwed him, and
That would be a terrible relationship.
Vision Wonder Man Scarlet Witch, which I think is pretty typical. Like a lot
love
of it,
triangle?
as love triangles go. Yeah, it's pretty well. No, I mean in comics. Not like, sometimes with a ionic man from behind the dead and a chaos switch and a robot get together. I think
Tale as old
was-
as time.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I think that it's basically how team books and ensemble cast. It's like going to be a predictable part of their story. Somebody's going to love somebody, but someone's not going to love them, but they're going to love this other person, but that person's going to have a brain tumor. And yeah,
I just feel like most of the time they're written so poorly.
that's a good point. Yeah.
I'm thinking of Forever Evil with Ultraman, Superwoman, and Owlman, and she's
Yeah.
pregnant, so it just felt very Jerry Springer.
And
I liked
also-
that.
And
No.
also Alexander Luthor. Don't forget that one.
No,
too.
exactly. I mean, that
I do think kind of side note, I do think it's a little tropey and needs to get away from the woman having all these suitors.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like, if I was, had the hots for somebody,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Well, I also like this person," I'd be like, "Well, I'm not wasting my time with it. Go
Yeah.
go over there then."
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
that's a good point, because a lot of the time in love triangles, even if two of them are together, that third person or fourth person, depending on like how complicated the situation is still there. So say you're rooting for either side. Say you're rooting for Wolverine or Scott. If Jean is with the other one, you know that the other character is still pining, and she kind of might be pining
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah.
you can't even really enjoy the relationship when it's happening.
it destables it from the beginning.
Exactly.
But some of this stuff, it's like they're bad relationships, but they're good in terms of like moving a story along or creating intrigue or conflict.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I see both sides. I think I'm more just kind of tired of the trope.
Yeah, well, let me spice it up, because sometimes Thor wants to date a beautiful woman like James Foster and vice versa, but that doesn't work out, and so instead he starts screwing around with a Hulk, and nobody understands that shit at all.
I think you have some feelings.
No,
about
I was just saying, it's hypothetically, wouldn't that be weird if that?
He is dating the Hulk currently, in the She-Hulk. in the
Oh.
comics.
It doesn't make any sense.
I was like, I hadn't heard that.
It doesn't make any sense.
The picture that has been like all over the place of Hulk and
Yeah.
or She-Hulk. I keep saying Hulk. She-Hulk and Thor kissing. I mean, even it just looks weird.
Well, here the thing that there is some subtext here that makes perfect sense about it, but they don't even mention it, which is that like the Norse gods like to
Screw around?
make the beast
Well-
with two backs with giants all the time. That's true. That
It's
was
not
like,
limited to Norse mythology.
No, that's true. That's true. Also, it's also real. Some people like to screw giants, but that like,
Totally meant Greek mythology, but I see
that too,
what
that
you
too.
did there.
I see what you mean. But anyway, I'm just saying. So it's like there's some sense about him wanting to get it on with a big lady, but they don't even mention that. It's just like I don't know if the idea is he's just always secretly loved the Hulk. It's like that episode of Seinfeld where George starts dating a girl that looks just like Jerry.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. I don't know if that was what they were going for, but okay. Anyway,
Okay, so I want to break down somebody's relationship, and I want to see if you guys can guess what character I'm talking
Oh
about.
no, okay.
don't say it if you get it, so we can both. Okay.
All right. So, boy hires girl as a secretary. Boy falls in love with girl. Boy reveals heroic secret identity to girl. Girl flees to Hollywood to become an actress. Girl becomes a porn star, gets addicted to heroin, sells secret identity of boy to crime boss.
I know it.
I know too.
Undergoes nervous breakdown before forgiving and reuniting with girl. Girl becomes anti-pornography talk radio host who believes she has HIV but doesn't. Girl is killed in arms of boy by boy's arch enemy.
Yeah, I know who it
Okay,
is.
say it at the same time. Okay, we'll say it after 3. So 1, 2, 3, and we'll say it. Okay, right? 1, 2, 3.
Matt
Melania
Murdock, Karen
Trump.
Page.
Did you say Melania Trump?
What did you say?
Oh my God.
Hold on. Okay, you're probably right now that I think about it. I've gone back over and I think you're right.
That is awful.
It's definitely Karen
This
Page.
is a good
So-
example of how different mediums can do characters better.
And the whole her thinking that she has HIV or whatever is Mysterio. He posed as a doctor and changed the results. I mean, it's just insane.
What a cool Mysterio moment.
I just
though, by
feel
the way.
like that is so insulting to Karen Page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that show, that's the stuff that I don't like that they do in comics. I mean, she leaves because she finds out he's a superhero, becomes an actress, aka porn star. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is just.
Well, she
so
should have known
convoluted.
that it was a dangerous person. He's Daredevil, not Dare Jesus. Okay? Obviously, don't get involved with the guy.
The show did it better, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, of course.
I agree.
She's awesome.
All right, so I hope you love our love episode. So it's
I loved it.
recommendation time. Woohoo! I'll kick it off, I guess. I'll recommend Green Arrow and Black Canary, #1. That's the comic. It's actually called that.
Oh, nice.
It's a really interesting twist on events because Oliver's dead and somehow comes back, but it's a clone.
Oh, no. I hate clones.
And they get married. So
What?
Yeah, just read it. It's really interesting. It's a cool twist on a little love story. Kayla.
Yes. So, breaking genre, or like a comic medium, as I do, I'm going to recommend The Wolf Among Us. It's a Telltale game.
Oh yes,
That'll highlight Bigby and Snow White's relationship. It's a really important subplot in that game, and it's a fantastic game in itself. So
I
go
really
play
like that recommendation. Look at you.
Oh. My recommendation, I think it's funny because you did Green Arrow and Black Canary, and that was my favorite. And then my recommendation is about a queer couple. Yay. So it's a Young Avengers Volume 1. It's called Style Over Substance. And if you're looking for this, it's written style greater than sign substance. That's like even on Amazon, it looks like that. And Hulkling and Wiccan are a young gay couple and everything like that. And they're super cool. It's if I didn't say it, it's Kieran Gillen and James McKelvey. This came out in 2013. There's been a bunch of Young Avengers series, so I don't want people to get the wrong one. And it's really, really good. And this is, I think, one of the first queer relationships I've seen on in comics where it wasn't the point of it. It's just their relationship. They very rarely even draw attention to the fact that they're queer. And I think that's a great, pick for people who both are excited about it's a gay couple. And for those people who are a little tired of always hearing about progressive stuff, I think you'll like this too, because it really doesn't make a big deal about it itself.
Not like with what DC did and the original Green Lantern just
Yeah.
happened to be gay all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also it's just a really fantastic run. I think it's got Kid Loki in it. It's a great
I
story.
like
love
those
Kid
two
Loki.
characters a lot.
Yeah.
Too. Wiccan and Hulkling. They're so cool.
So I think you'll really like it. You get some good romance and a great story all along. So
Look at us, guys. We did good recommendations this week. And then special thanks this week. We got a new Patreon.
Woohoo!
Yes.
It was Mr. Shane Boone.
Shane
So.
Boone.
Shane Boone.
Yes.
So we have, like we do, we give people that, go to our Patreon and donate or subscribe, whatever you want to do. We give them a superhero name and power.
I think his last name's Boone, and that can be like a favor or a wish. So he should be the not Trixie Genie.
Oh, that's really good.
Look at that. It's like a play on his last
That's a good
name.
I got one too. Can we give him 2 powers?
I was going to say he shines flashlight light out of his eyeballs because Boone. I don't know.
That's
I
good.
know where I was going with that.
But that's what he could do. So it's similar to Daniel Boone, the frontiersman because his last name is Boone, he's like the magical descendant of that character. And because Daniel Boone, like Davy Crockett, would wear like a coonskin cap, he has the power when he sees a small animal, he can turn that animal into a hat.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's a good power to have.
Well, Mr. Boone has 2 powers, so that's pretty awesome.
And it turns out he's the villain of Squirrel Girl. Because he can fight her squirrel, he can turn them all into hats, and it's very sad.
But the most important thing, what would his name be?
That's
It can't be Mad Hatter because there's
true. It's a Happy Hatter. That's his name. Yeah, it's Happy.
Insidious Hatter.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Phantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates.